Hey there, folks. How you doing today? Welcome to this Friday afternoon live stream where we're going to be talking about crop circles, electromagnetic phenomena, vortex dynamics, and lots of interesting stuff related to crop circles. I just thought it'd be interesting to tell you about my experience with crop circles, which goes all the way back to 1997. And I don't think still to this day you've been really told the full story about crop circles. It's a different story than we've been led to believe. So we'll talk about that in a moment, and maybe if you're good at the end, we might have some guitar music. Yes, Corky, nice to have you here. Jules, luscious Jules. Who else do we have? Hi, Emily. How are you? Welcome to the live stream. Yes, Corky, that is my own guitar music. I've been playing. My mom taught me how to do finger picking when I was 14 years old. We're talking in the 1970s, and I've been finger picking ever since. So that's like a half a century of finger picking. It's really what I love to do. And just like Ernst Friedrich Florenz Kolodny, you know, the father of acoustics from Germany, he created these Kolodny patterns, we know it as cymatics. He also was a violinist, would go around Europe playing his violin and create these patterns on these metal plates, these standing waves. So there's definitely connection between music and science. And that song, that intro song, which I just use for the intro, you know, when you use other people's music, it often gets complicated on channels like this, YouTube and copyright and all that. If you use your own music, there's no problem. YouTube did write once and said that I was infringing on my own music, and I said, this is my own music. I can play it anywhere I want. And so that's Beyond Distance from the Earth Dreaming CD, which you can get on I'm on all streaming services. Any of the streaming services, you can find my music. Just put my name in, put in Beyond Distance, and you will find it. Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere else. So thanks for asking. And maybe we'll play some songs at the end, since really what we're talking about is resonance. So without any further ado, let's get on with the show. So I want to tell you about a couple things before we get into the presentation. I'm going to show you a lot of different pictures of crop circles and videos of the weird electromagnetic effects. We've seen them. And then explain to you why I think we're actually making progress towards understanding the vortex dynamics around crop circles, because people are writing about this. We've had a lot of good research, and research has been uncovered. And it's really, to my mind, it's really starting to make sense. And this is after 30 years of wondering what the heck are we seeing out there in these crop circles over and over again. I'm going to show you some video of it. So before we get into that, which I think you'll enjoy, I want to go for about an hour or so, and then we'll take your questions and answers at the end. And I hope you're having a great Friday afternoon to boot. So the first thing I just want to announce is the audio version on Audible is now out of Opening Minds. I'm especially proud of this. I recorded it a while back. The recordings are from when I did the book, but Audible didn't exist back then. We didn't have downloadable audiobooks. You had to mail people physical CDs. And this is my book, Opening Minds, A Journey of Extraordinary Encounters, Crop Circles, and Resonance. And it has tons of great pictures of crop circles and our experiences in them. And if you want to hear me reading this to you, the adventures of crop circles and balls of light and remote viewing and weird encounters and fractal geometry, it's now available on Amazon Audible, and you can You can download it. I think they have a nice discount on it the last time I checked. And it's about 6 hours long of me reading this to you. Now, let me just tell you one thing. The mastering technology has gotten better since I originally recorded it. So even in desktop platforms that we all can get for a few $100s, studio quality audio recording systems that go right on your laptop, your desktop, anywhere. Those now have mastering software plugins built in that do a very good job. So I feel like the audio quality on the Opening Minds audiobook is better than it was before because I was able to use these mastering plugins. It's something you would have had to pay a lot of money for back 20 years ago to have someone do it for you. And I feel like the plugins that are built in now to these platforms do a good job. And I think it made my voice come out a little more from the mix because I put my music tracks, each chapter, the intro and the outro, and in the middle, I kind of used the music, my own music, different songs from over the years. I have 5 albums that are out now, and I started recording back in the 80s. Guitar music. And so I put this in as the background track, so it helps to have the mastering software which controls and adjusts the audio levels so that the voice sounds clearly and distinct with the music in the background. I think I worked on it for a couple weeks from the summer to about October to master it. So I think you'll like it. And if you're listening to this now or later, if you just send me your receipt from the purchase, I'm happy to send you the PDF of Opening Minds to go along with the audiobook so that you can look at all the cool pictures of the orbs and the crop circles. And this is one of my favorites. Yes, the Milk Hill formation of 1997. I'm happy to send that to you. So just send me your receipt, and I'm happy to send you the PDF. So you can listen, watch as I'm reading it to you. I'm always happy to hear your comments, anything I say in there, and so forth. And one more thing. Black Swan Ghosts. Yes. This is a newer book that I published and revised last year. Yes, we have a new edition of it as of previous summer. Yes, 2024. I put in some new cases. This is my book about UFO and ET witnesses, and some of these cases are absolutely riveting. I'm just telling you this because I have a Kindle countdown deal on Amazon right now, and you can get it for just, as of today, 99 cents. The countdown deal is it goes up every couple days. It starts at a low price and then gradually over a period of a week gets back to the usual price of $5.95, which I still think is a deal for this. But if you ever wanted to read any of my books, you could start for 99 cents now. Today, I just checked it before the price goes up. I think it goes up overnight to $1.99, and then you know how it works, the Kindle countdown deal. So I think you're going to enjoy this, and even if you don't want to purchase it, you can go to blackswanghost.com and look at the videos of the witnesses that I based the book on, and you can hear them telling me their riveting stories of seeing all these craft. The one that always gets me, of course, is Peter Leather. Yes, Corks, it's very steep at 99 cents. That's how the Kindle deal works. It starts that way. Peter Leather, who we always knew from the crop circles from Beckhampton, the area right in the middle of Wiltshire there, where he used to tell us this story of seeing this thing come land in the 1 a.m. as his friends were walking over the downs in Surrey, and this thing lands with these lights, and something gets out. Tall being, he said, in a skin-tight suit with a red light in its right hand, and it was I will never get over it. Anyway, it's in there, and if you want to watch the video of Peter telling us he was such a champ for letting me record him and put it in the book. Bless his heart, Peter Leather. And He was a jockey for the Queen at one point, and he had this sighting with a friend, and he gets phone calls about it. And then he's asked to go to a quote-unquote UFO meeting in Manchester, where he's the only person there besides a whole bunch of other guys in uniforms who want to hear his story at this UFO conference. This is back in the 70s. We think that might have been some sort of classified UN program in UFO research. Anyway, that is in there, and I just encourage you to go to the blackswanghost.com site and just watch his testimony there. It's quite fascinating. So let's get to what we want to talk about today. And I can see your comments on the screen. Just hold your questions towards the end. Hi there, short order. How are you doing? And glad to have you here. So what I want to share with you is why I think we're making progress in crop circle research after all of these years, because it's a topic that's grown and then sometimes waned in popularity. How did I get involved? I'll show you in a moment. It came out of remote viewing. But what I wanted to talk about is why I think there is a larger paradigm emerging, partly from the low energy nuclear reactions, coherent energy transformations that are researched by Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project, Bob Grenier, and others who've done a lot of work in how excess heat is generated. They've done a lot of experiments. The Vega experiment, they've looked into the wind hacks. As Corky was mentioning just a second ago here in the comments, the thunderstorm generator, Corky and I got to see that in operation in Greensboro, North Carolina. Right, Corky? We saw it there at the Cosmic Summit 2024. We saw it in operation, and it was really quite an experience. We couldn't see the inside, what was going on in there, but it had this Rank-Hilsch vortex tubes, which allegedly generate these kind of micro ball lightnings. And all I can say, and Corky can back me up on this, anyone who was there was no smell of exhaust coming out of these ordinary standard generators that you buy at the store, any hardware store, any place you go to get generators nowadays. We stood next to it. There was no smell of carbon monoxide, dioxide, the emissions. It smelled clean, the exhaust. So all I can say is that was my experience of the thunderstorm generator. It was working all weekend. Same generator, just with this Rank-Hilsch vortex, double two steel balls put together that recirculate some of the exhaust back into the engine, with the addition of these exotic vacuum object microball lightning type things, which we have different names for. All variations of electrostatic charge, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. So I've seen some examples of this, and it's that type of research plus something I talked about in the last live stream, Gerald Pollack's work in the role of electricity in the planet, in our universe. And Pollack makes an excellent argument here, folks, that it is electrostatic charge and charge separation, which is generated by the sun generating positive charges every day. The negative charge of the Earth that seems to arise at a minimum just from the amount of water, surface water we have on the planet, creates this very interaction between positive and negative charges that Pollack says is responsible for holding the atmosphere to the Earth, generating wind, even keeping the planet revolving after billions of years. He mentioned so many cases where charge separation plays an important role in nature. And this is what Bob Grenier and the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project have been talking about recently, well, for a long time now. And the researchers that were looking into this, for example, Takeaki Matsumoto in Japan, that Bob Grenier was successful in recovering all his research materials, a really world-class nuclear physicist in Hokkaido, who also was doing cold fusion research, as it was called back then, was able to create other ways of generating these reactions than Fleischmann and Pons. He used these underwater spark discharges, was able to create very interesting transmutation effects. This is examples of carbon film coming out of a tiny lead ball. How does that much carbon film come out of a lead ball at room temperature, right? It creates this nucleonic synthesis. And this is actually the basis of the thunderstorm generator. This is allegedly how it transforms these carbon waste products into these harmless inert gases through transmutation. Well, it was Takeaki Matsumoto and then good old Ken Shoulders, who his work into what he called exotic vacuum objects, micro ball lightning. There's been a convergence. There were other researchers, Meziets from Russia, who seems to have discovered it around the time of Ken Shoulders, but because they're so isolated, the researchers, for a variety of reasons, he didn't realize it had already been discovered in the West. He called them ectons. And there are different names for this process, but these are all variations based on what I know about this in electrostatic charge, which is commonly called static electricity, but people like Pollock and others argue, William Beatty and others have said it's not static electricity any more than water that's not moving is static water. It's just types of charge separation and electrostatic charge, and the charges, when they're separated, could seem like they're not interacting. Well, going into all of this research recently, and Pollock goes even so far, I talked about this last time, he says that there are experiments showing that spiders in a completely windless environment can still float. This is how spiders are able to go from one continent to another. Spiders are able to fly. They're able to fly in the same ways that birds fly, not just from wings flapping. And while that might have inspired the Wright brothers, birds can allegedly stay aloft also with no winds, or not enough to support their weight because of electrostatic charge. And in Charged, Pollock goes into some of the kind of the fractal structure of their wings, which he says creates electrostatic charge, which is the same type of argument that Grebennikov made in how insects are able to levitate. And you remember Grebennikov was this person that created this levitating sort of, it was a kind of looked like a scooter without any wheels, and he would hold on to it, and there are photos of him off in the air, and he said it was from all these little wings that he had glued to the bottom from beetles and things, creating this electrostatic charge. Well, all of this got me thinking that this is what explains a lot of the phenomena around crop circles. So let's get right into it, and then we will get to some of your questions in a moment, and we will look at this fascinating paper about structured electrons, because I'll just go through this at the end, but let's look at a couple of pictures first, and then we'll look at some of these articles which argue that you can mold and change the structure of electrons from chiral shapes. Now, chiral means that it has a directionality to it, has a helicity to it, okay? And that's really one of the main features here. So let's take a look. Let's see if this is working. I'm going to switch over to another screen here. So yes, I want to show you some of these slides here. Can we all see that? Yes. 1 second. Yes, here we go. Okay. So this is I'm going to show you some slides, and this is a lecture that I started giving like around 15 years ago, folks. So, these are actually not completely new slides, but I have another way of looking at it now based on the work of MFMP and Gerald Pollack, and this general area showing that we've underestimated the role of electricity and electrostatic charge in creating dynamic processes on the Earth, generating a lot of anomalous phenomena. And Pollack argues that we haven't looked at these phenomena because everyone just assumes, well, we know everything there is to know about wind. We know everything there is to know about water, but we don't. And he said, his other book is The Fourth State of Water, this sort of liquid crystalline state of water that he says arises from charges going in from the sun into water, giving it an electrostatic charge and creating this crystalline state of water. He mentions just right at the beginning that he invited someone to the University of Washington, Seattle, where he's in biology, hydrology, biology department, one of these departments. And he was told by his department head that it could adversely affect his career just by inviting someone, a Japanese researcher, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, who had argued for a crystalline form of water. I mean, just arguing that there was a fourth state of water. You and I have been taught about three states of water, but Pollack and others argue there's a state in between the liquid and the solid states that has a crystalline pattern to it, forms these hexagonal lattices, which gives water these interesting properties. For example, why does warm water freeze faster than cold water? It's kind of counterintuitive. Why does water form these wispy wisps coming off of your cup of coffee? And why do clouds even stay in the sky given that they weigh millions and millions of pounds full of water? What's holding them up there? So this sort of idea that there's another state and that there's charge involved, it's so heretical that he was even threatened not to have this person come talk to the University of Washington in his department. Well, guys, if you can't even talk about other states of water and states of charge separation in ordinary materials, how are we going to get past this current conversation we're having about UFOs, UAP, and so forth? You can see it's partly an institutional issue with our ability to talk about topics without feeling there are going to be repercussions from mentioning subjects in a new light. So let's take a look at some of these slides about resonance. How does resonance affect electric charge separation and so forth? How do the shapes matter? Well, this was one of the first crop circles I saw. And you can just settle back now for a little bit and just enjoy some of these pictures. This was the Windmill Hill Julia set from 1996. And this was the first RV target I had of a crop circle, okay? And this, you can see there's people standing down there. So this is really huge. And when we viewed it, this is what I got before I even knew what a crop circle was. It's like people standing around a circle with some hills in the background with energy coming in and out. Yeah, 1996, exactly. Corky. This was my P3 of it. And then here's a phase 4 for those of you who've taken RV from me or other people the phase 4 matrix. We teach this at the intermediate level, but basically it's a matrix where you put information in as you get it. And this is what I got, beings attempting to communicate archetypal information, and all sorts of information. This made me really curious. What are these? I had just come out of graduate school, folks. I didn't know what a crop circle was in 1996. This is over at Farsight Institute. This is like the advanced class, I think. There was a beginning class, advanced class. Each were about 8 days long. I'd never heard of crop circles before. So this is kind of a good blind target for me because I don't know very much about them. But after getting this target, I wanted to go see these for myself. And I found someone, I ran into someone. I went to my first UFO conference in 1996 in Denver, not knowing what to expect, but the topic of RV had gotten me interested in the subject matter. And I ran into Ron Russell from the Denver area who gave these crop circle tours, and I went with him the next year. And by the way, I have to tell you, so it was the year after this. In 1998, I arrived in the UK on Ron's crop circle tour. I kept going year after year. It was so fascinating. I'll show you why in a second. And I got so enthusiastic, I drove right out to this area that night with my little car from Heathrow. We had heard there was a new circle right out there in this area, the Windmill Hill, Avebury, Truslow area. I drove right out there, and it said not suitable for motors, which means you shouldn't be driving on it. But just all the way, just straight over from the U.S., had jet lag. I rushed down this little farm track. Okay, everything's fine. I get out and look at the circle. It's just getting dark. And then I said, well, how am I going to get back? So I decided I'm going to turn it around on the farm track. Well, big mistake because the little wheels went over the back of this little track and I couldn't move it. So I walked down to Beckhampton and I go over to Doug, the bartender who used to be over at the Wagon and Horses there in Beckhampton. And I knew Doug from the 2 previous years. No, I knew him from the previous year. And I said, Doug, I'm stuck. And he called a tow truck. And I waited there on the steps of the Wagon Horses. They were already closing for the night in the beautiful British summer. And the tow truck driver comes and we go back about a mile or two back up to Avebury, Truslow, and he pulls the little car out. Not cheap. It was about 250 quid to get towed. There wasn't any insurance covering it as it was a rental car, at least not that I knew about. Maybe I could have gotten reimbursed for it later. But anyway, I got a great story out of it because he said one of his buddies from the garage there was out in 96 around Windmill Hill, and he happened to see these orbs over this crop formation, guys. The Windmill Hill. So that was a great story for my 250 quid. The truck driver said, yep. He came back to the garage and said, I was just out by Beckhampton, and I went up by Windmill Hill. And I saw these orbs over the top of the field. Cool stuff. So, Tully saucer nest. The crop circles did not start in the UK. I mean, there is this book. I've been looking for it on my shelf here since I have all these other cool books. Here's one from the past, Round in Circles by Jim Schnabel. It's a good classic crop circle book. There is one called by Colin Wilson, The Secret History of Crop Circles, where he goes into all these old circles and people seeing them being created in different weird ways. But they start in modern times in the Tully saucer nests. And so people actually saw flying discs over these reeds in Tully, and it was in different years in Australia. And then these discs would lift off the ground and leave these flattened areas behind. So, this is one example of what we call the original phenomena, where people saw them make them. The UFOs leaving these behind. Kind of like this, Something I don't know the provenance of this photo. It's an older photo from way back. Something like this, where people just find this pattern in the reeds. Is it ball lightning, micro tornadoes, or whatever? I have a story in Black Swan Ghosts of a woman named Louise Vovis. You've heard me tell this before. And she saw one in Usk, Washington. I mean, she saw a flying disc, picking huckleberries with her brother. There were 2 other people out in these meadows. And she said the disc went down to the ground, and as it left, it flattened the plants. It did not make a crop circle. I asked Louise specifically about this. It just left, as it left, everything behind it was flattened. So she said flat as a pancake, by the way, 90 degrees. So this is an example, we do have examples, even people I've talked to, where UFOs, flying objects, a UAP, whatever you want to call them, leave these behind. Okay, is it from the propulsion system, it's kind of a space-time effect, a resonance effect? We're not sure exactly. But the crop circles have these helical patterns, and this is sort of what I want to talk about tonight. These sort of spiral, helical, what we call chiral, a directional pattern of the wheat. Regardless of how they're made, for the most part, you get these helical spiraling types of patterns. It could be in the way that the wheat is kind of laid down. It could be in a spiral form in the pattern, but you'll see this even in these circles that look a little more angular. This is one from the Avebury area. In those smaller circles, you'll see the wheat in a helical chiral pattern. And a lot of these pictures, by the way, are from our friend Peter Sorensen. Thanks, Pete, for the pictures. He took a lot of pictures over the years and shared them with us. Very nice of him, put a lot of work into these pictures. So there is a difference right away between the outstanding field, the outlying field, and the crop circle part in the way that the wheat is laid down and the directionality of the wheat. Even in these more kind of stylized patterns that don't necessarily look like a crop circle, we could call them a crop formation, right? You're going to find these helical patterns in a lot of them. This sort of, we called this the Hydra. This is from 98. This is one of the early experiences I had, folks. This affected my camera. It wouldn't focus properly on this circle. Now, this picture is from the air, but when we were on the ground, it just was phasing in and out. It was not the cameras we had. Well, we don't use cameras a lot as much as we used to. We have our phones now, but this is before the age of cell phones having very good cameras in them. So you had your standalone camera that took a card, a little SD card, and it had this auto-focusing mechanism. Sometimes it was a physical mechanism. My camera would not take focus on this particular circle, and everything came out blurry. Hello. We'll get to that in a moment. By the way, how's the sound, guys? Just let me know if any issue with the sound. Blurry. Yes. Here's another beautiful one from 1998. Again, thanks for Peter for all these great photos. This is one of the largest ones anyone knows about. This is from the top of Milk Hill, I believe, in 2001. Short order. Cook, we will get to your questions. Just hold those questions towards the end. We will have time. This is the one, this is one of them from the same era. Just beautiful stuff. This particular one, yes, it's from 2000. This one, and I'll get to this in a moment, really created interesting electrostatic readings on our meter. It was positive, negative, like a circuit. This was also over in the Avebury area. One of the first people to show up there. This, what we call these, the moire patterns. We also found that there was a book about moire and tessellated patterns by John Wilson, Dover Press, 1983, where we found some of these pictures, which led us to think, how is that possible? Well, all of these showed up that summer. The magic pillow, the sunflower, the grid, and this kind of magnetic moire pattern were all in evidence in 2000. Yep, 2000. So this is the static meter we used. This was from Trek in Medina, New York. And this is the 520. And this is where we started to see real interesting effects on static charge. And it's completely consistent with Gerald Pollack. I saw Pollack talk to the SSE meeting in Washington, D.C. in 2015. And he talked about something that I had seen right in the field here with the crop circles, which is that it generated a lot of negative charge right in the circles, and it faded away as the nighttime came. And what Pollock tells us in his books, Fourth Phase of Water, and Charged, is that the sun is pumping energy into the earth all day. It's pumping in positive charge. And these positive charges, for the most part, stay up in the atmosphere and charge up clouds and so forth with a positive charge and particulates. And down on earth, it's a negative charge. And this gradient grows during the day, the gradient of negativity from the earth. As you would raise up this meter, it would go negative, negative. Up to a certain point, Pollock, and I haven't been up that high with the static meter, Pollock argues that at a certain height in the troposphere, it shifts over back to the positive. But this gradient arises during the day, folks, and then it collapses at night when the sun stops charging, which he argues is responsible for wind. It's not due to pressure changes, or at least not totally. The reason you get these trade winds in the morning, right, from east to west, and then these winds from west to east, is the sun charging up the atmosphere with electrical charge. Now, this is very interesting. Pollock calls it lateral charge separation. Isn't that interesting? Not a vertical separation like we could see with this static meter, but a lateral separation in the atmosphere around us, suggesting, again, that there's a... the long and the short of it is, yes, Jules, we will get to the spinning in a moment. Yes, it is there. I should have thought about that. We'll find it. The interesting thing, I'm going to tell you what the take-home point of this is right now. For me, reading Pollock's work, listening to Bob Greenyer, MFMP, all of that research, thunderstorm generator, is that there is a large-scale network of electrical charge that we're around all the time that is often in a neutral state, so you don't see it. It's like if you're a fish and you live in the water all the time, you're not really used to the water. You don't even know it's there until you're out of the water, right? We're in this sea of charge that for most part is sort of at an equilibrium, unless you are around lightning storms, ball lightning, cold fusion Leonard, coherent energy transformation experiments, which are generating excess heat, which alter that charge balance. Or you walk across the floor and accumulate charge, and you see that little spark between you and your pet or the doorknob. But that charge is there all the time. And I'm going to argue here tonight that this constitutes another type of reality within the reality we're used to that we normally don't see most of the time, but it exhibits itself. And there is evidence going back to Yuri Zeldovich, the amazing Soviet researcher from the 50s, the Yang and Lee parity violation experiment, where they determined that there was something off in our universe, folks, that there was a parity violation. It was not symmetrical the way it should be. Our universe should look the same if you hold it up into a mirror, but it doesn't. You don't have the same particles. Some of them only have a left-hand spin. We don't have the ones like neutrinos with the right-handed spin. Where are they? Way back, Yang and Lee argued along the lines of Paul Dirac that there was an antimatter universe and we were seeing only half the picture. Okay? Like a mirror universe. That's where this leads to, is once you have charge separation, even at a macro state, you're creating parity violation, or you're releasing some of that parity violation and some of that other universe, which is around us all the time. I'm not going to argue that it's a parallel universe, because as Ken Shoulders has said, it's within our own reality, but it's decoupled from us, right? So there is like a mirrorverse. Jules and I often joke, we call it the unireverse, right, Jules? The unireverse. And this might be where some of these weird, paranormal, strange, and supernatural phenomena are coming from, is the universe. It's within our reality, but it has a different permittivity and permeability, decoupled from us, as Shoulders argues. We'll look at that just briefly before we go at the end here. And this is like another world within our world, next to our world, that we normally don't see, that when you get charge separation and charges coming back together, it creates a bridge to that reality. And this could be why you see these phenomena around crop circles and paranormal hotspots and portal areas and so forth. Okay, that's one argument. It's sort of my thinking about this. And why things that you photograph from this neighboring reality, this mirrorverse, this universe, look blurry. Just ask Jules about that. Okay, here's another one. So this is a beautiful one by Hackpen Hill. One of those white horses is out there. Beautiful, folks. Isn't this just incredible? I mean, the size of a football field with all these beautiful spirals and nested crescents, right? This one also blew out our static meter. This one blew out our static meter. Ron was walking around in this one. This molecular formation near West Overton, up on the hill there, on the other side of the A4, blew out his static meter. So we get circles. That's kind of funny. This is a crab circle. So this is a little different, folks. Hermit crab circle. But does it have interesting static effects? Maybe there's another effect here that we haven't measured. We had these various types of stylized, made with a different technique that look kind of the same way that newspapers and things are printed. The alien holding the disc with the message, the alien face, and yeah, here's what it looked like on the ground. You still have these patterns, this directionality of the wheat. The chill Bolton face. The Arecibo, so-called Arecibo response message. Anyway, you get the idea. There's all these different types of patterns over the years. We have so many stories from these formations of all our cameras and batteries going out. People were capable of measuring fields. I mean, even in medieval Japan, they had very good measurement techniques for measuring fields. Just to point out the other side of this is people have learned to work with fields for a long time. They're the Giri patterns from Islamic art, which use quasi crystalline-like forms to create these repeating patterns, the Giri tiles. Very complex geometric patterns from before modern mathematics. So, we did come across human circle makers. This was the Matt Williams team, and Matt had approached us, and he asked if we wanted to see one made in the daytime. We got to see some, we were out with the farmer there, and he had been paid. It was for an advertisement, and we did see people make these, and it got us interested in making them ourselves eventually, which is how we ended up making them too, is we could see that it was possible for people to make these with you needed someone who knew what they were doing, who would direct it, but there are people like this who can see these patterns in their minds and are good at putting these down in fields. So that's what it looked like in the end. Here's another one Matt did. He created a 7-sided star, and there was a challenge given out by one of the researchers, crop circle researchers, who said it's impossible for people to make 7-sided objects. So Matt went out and made it, and he mailed us the pattern the night before he made this, which was used. He mailed this to some researchers, and they didn't take it kindly. They sent it to the police, and he got arrested for this and was fined. I think it was £100 or something. Matt, maybe you can tell us later what you were fined for. It's called vandalism of crop or something like this. And the judge told him, you can make these all you want, but just notify the farmer ahead of time, get their permission. So we know that people can do complex designs. And here I am. This is back in 97 or so, and it's way back with the donation boxes, right? This was by Stonehenge, right? The Julia set. Same time period, 96, right? Beautiful big formation by Stonehenge. Now, orbs have been seen in and around crop formations. This is one. We were on in those trees right behind here, folks. Woodborough Hill. I was out there with Stephen Greer and Ron Russell. We were going to do Skywatch later that night. One of the Koch and Kyborg, the two German researchers from Germany, had a friend visiting them. He stopped at Golden Ball Hill, and he took a photo of this, pointed right in our direction. He saw this with his eye. And this is ball lightning. As far as I'm concerned, this is the ball lightning family, orbs, ball lightning, that we've learned a lot about from MFMP and the work of Ken Shoulders and Takeaki Matsumoto and all those Air Force reports. I'll be talking more about that, the ball lightning connection to this at Contact in the Desert. I've been invited to speak at Contact in the Desert 2026. I think it's May, June, around that time period. So if you'd like to come and say hi, I will be there, and I will be giving a lecture about these orbs and ball lightning and so forth. Well, yes, Jules, we're talking a good, 30 years have gone by, Jules, since that picture was taken. It just seems like yesterday. Here's one by Barbary Castle, and this one, I mean, it's moving fast, 200 miles an hour. I calculated how fast it moved based on, I walked the area where this orb was seen. It's not a bird because it was going really fast, a couple hundred miles an hour, before it just disappears in nowhere. So we do have these orbs, various light phenomena, so forth. Now here's an interesting one. There I am walking down the street on the left side there. And you can see, what is this, St. Elmo's fire? Is this what they call it? You see this discharge into this lightning conductor at the top of this church here? Isn't that interesting? I did not see it at the time. The person behind me, the town is, I should remember this. It's right there in Wiltshire. And this is, it'll come back to me. You don't see, this is the argument I'm making to you tonight. You do not see all these electrical phenomena going on around you. In this case, I guess I might have seen it if I was looking in that direction, or maybe this is instantaneous. As Ken Shoulders said, is that the researcher worked at Stanford, worked with the federal government and DARPA making microelectronic masking techniques. He said that these exotic vacuum objects form their own structures at electronic speeds. They're very quick, right? Now here's one that I was given the pattern ahead of time, and I was told, would you like to see us make a complex pattern? And these circle makers did it. I mean, I've outlined this in Opening Minds. They were able to make this pattern. I saw them do this. So this, and people came in the next day, and there was a feeling of charge there. So this changed my idea about it, just seeing people make these. And we started making them ourselves. We made these patterns at Hill Martin. We paid the farmer for 3 to use his field. This is our tour group in 97. There we are, pushing the wheat down and so forth. And the researcher Maso Maki was with us. And this is what our formations looked like when we finally finished them. And there was static charge differential there from inside the formation to the outside. So this is what it leads to, is you're getting this charge separation, whether it's made by UFOs, tornadoes, wind blasts, whatever creates that flattening pattern, that chiral sort of pattern leads to this charge separation, which we can measure with our static meter, which in and of itself is enough to create a very interesting electromagnetic effects. So my argument here, and by the way, this is one that Masao Maki made of his Japanese family crest that was in Boulder on his sushi restaurant. He paid some circle makers to make this pattern. This one was done by Peter Sorensen for a film crew. It had that beautiful wavy pattern in the middle with that directionality. So my argument here tonight, folks, is it's the directionality and the lay of the wheat. Because the wheat's a living material and it has water in it, and that water has charge, and it's charged by the sun all day. And that directionality and that fine-grained pattern in a vortex pattern, in a spiral pattern, with these sort of self-similar features in many of these crop circles, the fractal nature of it, which Corky's pointing out in the comments. The fractal level gives it a type of charge and charge separation, which leads to very interesting, non-ordinary electromagnetic effects. Here's one we made in Washington, a small one, with the farmer came out and helped with this. So this is ordinary grass that's laid down in a field, just higgledy-piggledy, but in a crop formation, you can see it's got that directionality. And I think going with Pollock's arguments here, that directionality, that chirality, and the sun charging plants all day with that directionality leads to various types of electromagnetic effects and non-ordinary Maxwellian types of electromagnetics that affect our cameras and batteries in different ways. We made this beautiful math matrix for Scott Flansburgh, and then one of the cameras stopped working properly that was in it. Yeah, this took a couple days in. Scott is the world record holder for being able to add. Scott Flansburgh's friend with Alice Cooper. He can add numbers in his head, multiply. He uses a base 9 system. He wanted a base 9. Base 9 crop circle, themed crop circle with 9. So we made this, and Peter did a lot of the work, and we had a very good artist kind of put the numbers in, who was used to street art and so forth. There's us making these numbers. So, folks, I have made a lot of crop circles in my time, but these effects happen in the ones we make and in the ones we find. Beautiful Devil's Den formation, 1999. That rock there was called, it was a Celtic dolmen. So it's called Fifield Down. And it created this strange type of battery failure. Strange objects seen over the circles and so forth. This is for a movie, A Place to Stay. They recreated the Earth is Missing formation. So here, this was made for a Japanese film crew in New Zealand by Matt Williams. Again, you can see the precision there. No, it's man-made. You can see the scaffolding there. It's done for a TV crew. Also this one. The chiral molten iron, that's always been a mystery. There was that strange sort of iron found in the chiral formation. And there different plants, we find these kind of magical bending on some of the plants, though we think this could be the phototropic effect. We found this bending in our own formations that we made. I have some of the wheat right here, still from this day, where we found this sort of bending, in our own formations, the ones we made. So, whoops. Then there's the magnetic field analysis. And Colin Andrews and Jean-Noël Aubron, a French engineer that worked for aerospace companies, got these magnetic patterns from a magnetometer on this formation at Milton Hill Farms, where we got to walk around. Ron and I We knew it was somewhere around Milton Hill Farms. We just walked across those fields till we found it. And this is what the magnetic patterns looked like. So there is an electromagnetic effect just from, in my view, now you could have another interpretation, but folks, I mean, if you just take a look at this, you see these circular patterns of wheat, chiral helical patterns, and it's leaving a magnetic, it's leaving a magnetic pattern. It's an electromagnetic effect from an allegedly inert material like wheat. And this is proof positive that you get these electromagnetic effects. And this could be why we're seeing all of these strange effects. Our own formation, Hayes, Kansas, we had permission to make a small one. We were coming back from the RV conference in Austin, where Ingo Swann spoke for the first time. We got to see Ingo. We were driving back. We got permission to make a small one. All the photos came out strange in these readings. Look at these pictures. This is from a professional Nikon. Is it the F3 camera? Never did it before, never did it again. But here in the crop circle, what is going on here? This is it's almost as if the electromagnetic effect is either affecting photons, it's affecting light, or it's affecting the film emulsion. Yeah, look at these strange pictures, folks. Okay, while you're looking at this, I am going to take a quick bathroom break. Don't go anywhere. I'll be back in 1 sec. But just take a look at this. This is what our photos came out from our own small little formation. One moment. Okay, so we have had these film effects, guys. This is our own formation. It's man-made, it's small, but it's still creating weird electromagnetic effects. Now, Art Bell did ask me once, and this is an experiment I haven't done yet, but we should do it at some point. He was wondering if you had smoke particles over a crop circle or something, would it form a helical pattern? Art asked me this, bless his heart, on the air. One of the first interviews I did with him back was like the 90s. The first time I was on with him, it was with Linda Moulton Howe in 97 from the Glastonbury Crop Circle Conference. But I was on with him another time, and he asked, would smoke particles do this? It's a good question, Art. We still haven't resolved that. But look, folks, what is this? Do any of you have any idea what this is? Because we didn't see this. We just took a picture of our crop circle that we made, and it's doing this. Anyway, my ideas at the time, which now, thankfully, I mean, after 30 years, have grown, which is great. And I want to thank Bob Greenyer, MFMP, because they were one of the first people I came across around 2020. And Corky knows what I'm talking about. It actually started to make sense of why vortex patterns and patterns in natural material, natural media would create electromagnetic effects. Bob was one of the first people that I saw him first on ECAT World is making sense of this, right? Of how natural phenomena can create exotic effects. Not even just paranormal effects, just excess heat and energetic effects that you and I were not told about. We were never told about this. So my ideas at the time were that the crop circles are acting like a waveguide, channeling or transforming frequencies and energy like a liquid crystal with the grains that the crop circles are acting to as liquid crystals to energy in the environment, whether it be light or electromagnetic frequencies and so forth. And that it creates a resonance effect, which would explain some of the effects on our cameras and batteries and so forth. A plasmonic effect. And in the article I'm going to show you in a second, it's very rewarding just to see an article just yesterday in the Science magazine group that goes back these presentations from a couple decades ago, but the ideas are still basically essentially correct. We're just able to fill it in more. Is you get resonance patterns from the way plasmas move through different types of shapes. And isn't it interesting, this so-called Fano-like resonance is very much like what these people put together just with this CDs on a field just to create this pattern. It's just artwork that somebody did, I don't know who did this, to create a crop circle-like pattern with CDs taped together. Because I visited it, and this is what it looked like when we hiked up to Mill Hill. And yet that's a representation of Fano-like resonance, which is one type of resonance-creating system, affecting light. So the crystal idea, the liquid crystal idea, it still makes a lot of sense that these circles are acting like waveguides. And I'm saying regardless of how they're made, whether you and I make them, the circle makers, by the way, folks, call it natural magic. And that's the point here. This is a type of natural magic. You're taking just a natural material, well, mostly natural. It's a field full of planted wheat, reshaping it, and then it has this waveguide-like effect. Liquid crystals even look at a microscopic level like a wheat field, which is interesting. Anyway, the research shows us that these types of patterns have these type of electromagnetic effects, just like this article about magnetic vorticity and so forth, magnetic effects of vortical patterns. Different types of helicity, So this is sort of what I wanted to get across to you. Now here's what this article I'm about to show you really resolved for me yesterday. How would a crop circle interact with light, since the wavelength of light is so small and the wheat stalks comparatively are really big, right? How is the interaction even happening? Why would you get some of these anomalous light phenomena? If, the sort of woodpile effect, if you can understand this at a microscopic level, right? That there's this plasmonic effect at 4 micrometers, right? Which is what this pattern is showing you. But what about at our mesoscale? Why do we get some of these effects? These sort of metamaterial effects of guiding light and changing the direction of light from metamaterials. Well, it turns out that electrons and photons can interact. You can get these correlations between electromagnetic effects and light, which I'll show you in a second. There's also like these physical interactions, like through sound, sonic interactions, and so forth, graphene. And a whole bunch of other topics that kind of stem out of what we're talking about. Different ideas about how you can get ordinary materials acting in kind of very extraordinary ways. Again, this connects into the whole conversation about excess heat and coherent energy transformations. But there's something about the coherency of certain materials that leads the energy to be distributed in a different way. And if there are fractal toroidal dynamics, in the mix, you're going to get connections all the way down to the 0 point field, which is what Zverblis and Nevesky found. with their electromagnetic phantom research, which Bob Greener was able to uncover from Russian Soviet research. Same idea is that you have these different patterns, and the fractality of it, if it forms these closed ring within ring loops, goes all the way back down to the lattice, to the 0 point, and so forth. So let me show you sort of what I want to show you. Now, this is from an older presentation, but I want to show you how we can update it now. Here, let's take a look at this article. Yeah, here we go. So this is just from, I'll show you a couple more things here before we get to questions. Structured electrons with chiral mass and charge. This is from Science Magazine. July 11th, 2024. The ability to determine the chiral features of matter is important across a variety of disciplines. I like it already because they're saying it's not just subatomic quantum phenomena we're talking about here. The probe itself has a chiral feature that interacts with what's under investigation. And they've shown, Fang et al. Have shown that electrons can be engineered with a series of laser pulses, such that the mass and electronic charge are structured into a corkscrew shape, chirality. By combining ultrafast electron bunches in a transmission electron microscope with ultrafast helical optical pulses, it can imprint the laser pulses onto the electron. So this is an example of how light and electrons can interact. The resulting helical modulation, momentum of the electrons, de Broglie wavelength, shows ultrafast chiral properties on microscopic scales. And that's the editor's summary of it. And the article goes on that you get from coiling, left-handed or right-hand types of coiling, you get applications in quantum optics, particle physics, electron microscopy. But here's I'm just going to read you the first paragraph here. This is what's so interesting about it. They say that chirality and helicity, the hallmarks of crop circles, folks, crop formations, is they have this chirality and helicity. No matter how they're made, you and I are making them, lightning's making them, ball lightning, UFOs, shadow people, are intrinsic properties of the most elementary particles. But the chiral phenomena can also be created in assemblies of multiple non-chiral particles by the geometry of the composition. Common examples are the human hand, stereoisomeric molecules, crystal lattices, rotational phonons, skyrmions, which are magnetic knots, bacteria, and galaxies. So they're going from the micro to the macro, and this whole level, this directionality makes a big difference. And that's what this article is about. And this type of coiling that you see here affecting the electron phase seems to me what you are also getting in crop circles. In other words, they're like a type of natural technology. The circle makers weren't far off in calling them natural magic. And you get these spiraling coiling effects, which have all these types of interesting interactions between light, between the lasers and the electrons themselves. This is very kind of example of exotic physics, but for me, it finally connected how there can be interactions between light and matter. And I'm not saying that's the only way things are going on in a crop circle, but this is one of the types of interactions that could be going on there. For what I'm about to show you in a second, I'm going to show you some video of all these weird things happening in crop circles so you can see it for yourself. But this is an interesting article that shows us that these interactions happen from spiral, vortical types of patterns. Now, we have seen this in crop circles many, many times. And this is, if you want to go to this playlist I have on YouTube, crop circle, camera, electronics, and battery failure, or you can just go to, I tried to put it in here before. I don't know if it's visible. I don't know if this is showing up or not. Is that bit.ly, crop circle weirdness? This is where you can see this playlist. bit.ly/crop circle weirdness. Is that completely coming across on the screen? Let's see. We're sorry there. Is it? Let me see if I can rearrange it. Oh, where did I go now? Who knows? Okay. It's a learning curve, folks, with this technology. Where is my main screen? I'm in the view. Well, whatever. It's bit.ly crop circle weirdness. Let's just take a look at some of these, okay? I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this because of the way this interacts, but he's saying that his batteries got hot. This is in the Devil's Den formation. Batteries just totally fail. Yeah. So he said it's only the second time it's happened. He had 14 hours of battery life, and now it's gone. So here's an example of crop circles failing in the East Kennet Circle. This is, again, with our tour guests. This woman is describing how her camera just stopped working. This is her brand new camera, and it's gone. Just stopped working. I said, I've never done it before. She said, I think it's shot. It's just completely gone. So there are a lot of these. This is, next one's interesting. This is in the Chutes Causeway formation. This woman came in with her brother, and they saw an orb at the edge of the forest just floating by the trees. We saw them walking around the trees, and it kept going up and down, and it was an orb, she said, a couple feet across, right at the edge of the field. We saw them standing there, and really bright. She said it was really bright. So it's an example of ball lightning orbs. This is one of our tour guests, and he said he has a digital compass in his watch, and the direction stopped working. It didn't point to north anymore when he was in the crop circle. So this is kind of a magnetic effect. And this guy was a professor of engineering at University of Oregon. And here you can see an example of my camera getting blurry. Hello. See how it's not focusing correctly anymore? So you can see an example of that. Yeah. This tourist said his camera just stopped working. He said he's taken 900 photos. So you can just see some examples, folks. So one other thing I want to show you. Let's see. Again, this is sort of what I think may be going on with this charge separation, and we'll hold this off for another talk, but that you're getting permittivity and permeability changes in these areas, which would lead to strange effects. blurriness. This is the explanation that Hal Puthoff and others who worked with OSAP argued were the cause of UFOs having this blue shift and being blurry and moving faster than speeds that we're used to. So this is what leads us to believe that any time you get these exotic vacuum objects, you can get this mirror state of the so-called black EV, which I.M. Shekparanov has shown with the Shekparanov generator in his lab-produced ball lightning experiments. Let's see. Yes. If you want to read more about some of this research, feel free to go to cropcirclescience.com. Cropcirclescience.com. I just checked it this morning. And you can see the papers I've written in sort of a lot of these other images of cameras and batteries failing and so forth. So, yeah. So, let's see. So, in summary, before we get to questions here. Oh, yes. And one more thing I want to show you here. This idea, I'm just briefly going to touch on this, and this goes back to the work of Yuri Zeldovich from the 50s, this brilliant Soviet researcher who probably, whatever you're thinking, he already thought of it. Yang and Lee and Paul Dirac with the idea of antimatter is that there's a universe within our own universe. Okay, so this is something that there are even tests proposed to look for this. There's a test of neutron decay that Leo Broussard, we read that she was going to do this with the Oak Ridge lab. She works at Oak Ridge, and she was going to use some of their equipment at hours when it was available to detect neutron decay, because neutrons take too long. Freestanding neutrons take too long to decay. And there was this theory they may be doing some sort of like time-sharing experiment where they're partly in a neighboring universe or another part of our reality. Again, it's part of this parity violation question. But it suggests that what we're seeing most of the time, and this is going to resonate with all of you, is that we're not seeing all of reality. There's some of it's missing, and maybe some of it's bleeding through sometimes, which we call paranormal or supernatural phenomena. Creatures that are like us but different, and phenomena that seem similar, even some of these time slip experiences which you have read about or heard about. Some of them have been featured recently on the podcast SasquatchChronicles.com. So this is a topic that's being discussed. Are these parity violations indicating parallel realities or another, like a missing version of our own universe, where you find neutrinos that are spinning with a right-handed spin, where in our universe they only have a left-handed spin, whereas things should look symmetrical according to our understanding of physics. They should preserve their qualities when they're in a mirror state, right? But they don't. So where is that other reality? Is this where the dark matter is coming from? Is this why we can't see it? It's sort of in a hidden pocket, what I've called the dark matter pocket on some of my other videos. Anyway, guys, you get the kind of idea. So this all raises a lot of questions, and I think we can see, to sum it up from tonight, that any sort of charge separation, whether it's created naturally, it's mediated by a crop circle pattern, can create these Evo-like structures, ball lightning at a microscopic state, micro ball lightning, which, according to Ken Shoulders and others, can create this kind of decoupling effect, and objects that just to our eyes might be invisible or look really strange. I'm thinking of some of the things that they've seen out at Skinwalker Ranch. It's something I've talked to Jay Stratton about, Were they looking at a type of black ball lightning out there and some of those dark objects that seem to just absorb all light and generate an intense feeling of fear within them? Does it all come down to the fact that the sun is pumping electrical energy into our planet all the time, but it's separated, and it's separated into the positive side in the atmosphere, which disperses more slowly, or the negative side that we're on? And we were able to determine this negativity just from those Trek meters. We could see it always had this negative charge right down on the Earth. As you raised your arm up, sometimes it would switch to positive. So we have this sort of electrical polarity built in. And does this create all of these effects, everything from flying spiders, and which again have been, seen in laboratory experiments in the complete absence of wind, they're able to fly. The experiments were done in 2018, according to my research on it. All the way to blurry Bigfoot and other types of cryptids that they're in our reality, but they're in these other pockets of reality due to this parity violation. Something again, now, if it sounds kind of strange to think of that, that's what people thought about Paul Dirac when he proposed the existence of antimatter purely for mathematical reasons, working with his quantum equations. It suggested another type of matter, and it was verified a couple years later from this cosmic background radiation from detecting positrons. So sometimes we know about these things before we can actually see them. But folks, I think if you're watching this now and you've followed anything I've done or people who've related channels, you're going to see that what we call the paranormal might be this para-mirror universe, which is already really predicted by Paul Dirac. A mirrorverse, a unireverse, right? And some of these structures, like crop circles, begin to wind it and unwind it because of the way they affect charges and charge separation from the helical chiral patterns. In other words, this other reality is around us all the time, and sometimes we see it, like in RV, in the RV work we do in our remote viewing group that meets once a month, which you're welcome to join if you're interested. We get something that, based on what I've been able to put together and watching the MFMP videos, has to do with the Aharonov-Bohm effect. I mean, Hal Puthoff did get some patents in using the Aharonov-Bohm effect for non-local communications, and he was running the RV program with Russ Targ until Ed May took over in 92. So, was it 85? Sometime around there when Ed May took over. Hal later comes out with these patents in the early 90s for using the Aharonov-Bohm effect, which is a kind of very subtle, non-ordinary quantum effect of communication in the complete absence of an electromagnetic signal. It's this pure vector potential. It sort of goes along with this whole area. In other words, not only are there mirror creatures and mirror objects and mirror life forms, there are mirror electromagnetic processes which are inverted compared to what we're used to, which allow for non-local interaction, non-local communication. And it really all stems from this parity violation and how charge clusters can interact to create these other types of structures. Okay, that's what I'm going to say about it. And if you agree or disagree, feel free to comment right now in chat. And let's take a look at your questions. Or if you're watching this later, just put them in the box below. That is my interpretation of it. What I think we can see is that all of these types of phenomena that we're talking about tonight are interconnected in some way. And this would explain, just one last thing, why the human circle makers told me that they had seen shadow people in the circles while they're making them in small triangular craft before the age of drones come over their circles at night in 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. when they're making these. They experienced these sort of paranormal effects even while they're making the circles. Got it? So what this suggests is it's all natural, but it's just something we're not used to. We haven't been educated about it. And unfortunately, we're not still, you've seen Age of Disclosure. Now, we're still not finding out a lot about this type of research because at least in the U.S., it's been highly classified. Even the research from Skinwalker Ranch has people signed NDAs, and it's still hidden away. Private aerospace companies still have this information, which, it's funded by the American taxpayer, but we're told the implications of it are so big that for national security reasons, National Security Act, whatever rubric is being used to classify the information, it's still in these compartmentalized special access programs. And this is why you and I are figuring it out right now independently. We're going to figure this out one way or another. It's just whether we're going to do it with anyone's help or will it be citizen science eventually. We'll have our own remote controlled objects here and telepathic contact with Bigfoot and all these things. It's going to just evolve. That's what the universe does. It evolves. So let's take a look at your questions and let me see if I can get control back of my eCam. Oh, it was here. Let's see if we can get control back of eCam. Yes, we're back. Oh, here we are. 1 second. Yes. Okay. So let's take a look at questions, guys. Thanks for listening. Let's see. Yes, I think that the evidence indicates that and here's what I've talked about a lot, and Jules and I have talked about this. We have a Bigfoot Zoom group, which we've taken a slight hiatus from, but we had going for over 2 years straight. We had a lot of witnesses come in the group and tell their stories. People who had never shared their stories before, and they shared them with our Bigfoot Zoom group. And what we've seen in my research into this area, the whole basis of dark matter monsters and so forth, is you get the same physiological patterns every time, Corky, which is why it seems to me just on the surface, you're dealing with the same phenomena. You get the sudden cooling effect, which we've been told happens around cold fusion Leonard reactors sometimes, doesn't it? You had Jean-Paul Biberian say that the lab got cold. You have Gerald Pollack talk about vortex cooling. When you get a vortex shape, you are going to get cooling in the surrounding area. From tornado-like shapes will cool an area because they're absorbing energy to create their structure. You get the sudden silence that people report, even around ball lightning. People around ball lightning have reported they couldn't even hear ocean waves anymore. So there's an acoustic effect. Then there is the blurriness. People say the Bigfoot creatures or what other type of creatures, cryptids they're looking at look blurry. Hal argued to us, Hal Puthoff at the SSC meeting in 2018, SSC IRVA, that blurriness can be related to the permittivity shifts, which is what Shak Paranoff found out in his Mobius strip lab experiments, which I would encourage you to look at the MFMP YouTube channel for some of Bob's discussions of the Shak Paranoff generator. It creates this black ball lightning too. So that, and Shak Paranoff said not only did they see that blue shift in their own strange blue mists around their experiments, but they looked blurry because the permittivity is oscillating. It totally is consistent with what Hal said. It's consistent with Einstein's arguments for variable speed of light. We don't remember Einstein for the variable speed of light. We always think of him as arguing for this constant, like that's the only constant, one of the only constants in the universe is the speed of light. But he argued in two papers, 1907 and 1911, for a variable speed of light. In other words, the speed of light being affected by mass of galactic objects. And Alexander Unziker has talked about this on his YouTube channel. The variable speed of light totally makes sense with these paranormal, so-called paranormal effects that we see. There's also the space-time distortions and so forth, which seem consistent with that sort of effect. And strange sounds, directional sounds. I talk about this in the upcoming Flash of Beauty movie called Voices in the Wilderness about the Sierra Camp. Ron Moorhead and the Johnson brothers. This is the first movie made about Sasquatch vocalizations and Sasquatch sounds. And the strange thing about those sounds is they seem to be directional, where one person will hear them and the other person very close by won't. And they're very loud sounds. These are the type of sounds that people report are so loud it knocked them out of their chair. And yet other people in the area didn't hear it. That's like a coherent laser, like coherent light, but it's coherent sound. Normally sound doesn't act that way. This is another ramification of these sorts of you could call them extended Maxwellian dynamics. It's Maxwellian electromagnetics with a different texture, a different flavor, a kind of a fractal texture. And it leads to these types of effects. It's an alternative type of Maxwellian electromagnetism where you still have electricity and magnetism at right angles, but it could be coiled around, it could be loops within loops and so forth. Fractal. And this seems to create a lot of these phenomena, some of which we call paranormal, but it also seems to create an excess heat effect and be responsible for creating long-lasting, long-lived plasmoids, as Bogdanovich and others called it. Long-lived plasmoids, which we are told last for 2 days. In other words, you can turn off the equipment, take everything out, and that ball lightning will still be there for a couple of days in the air. It may not be visible, but you can detect it with magnetometers in that same area in the lab, just hovering, waiting around. And these types of objects can embed themselves in metals for really long periods of time, according to Shoulders and others. Then they can emerge again. And this is some of the features we see around ball lightning experiences. I've talked to these witnesses. Oh, wait a minute. There was one thing I wanted to show you folks. One more thing I want to show you. I wanted to show you my own ball of light experience. Okay, you got to see this before we go. This is kind of cool. Yes. Okay, so here it goes. This is what I was able to film over West Overton in 2007. It was below a cloud, and it's just hovering there. So you tell me what it is. It looks like a long-lived plasmoid to me. Matt Williams, thanks to Matt Williams, was able to stabilize it and keep it in the center of the focus here. But you can see that flashing colors there. Isn't that odd? And then it just disappears. Interesting, huh? So I saw this with my own eyes. It was just sun was setting, but because of the cameras at the time, the light levels weren't very strong. You don't see it. It was right below a cloud, just hovering there. Is it a UFO? Is it a UAP? Is it ball lightning? That's my guess. But look at the way it's flickering and flashing. All those colors that are, it's oscillating through these colors. It's there, and then it just disappears. It disappeared while helicopters were coming over the hill from behind me. And at the time, I was out in the field and wondering what patterns we were going to make that summer. Just imagining crop circle patterns, and this showed up right up there. Go figure, folks. Okay. That's in the playlist of crop circle weirdness. bit.ly/crop circle weirdness. Okay, I want to get your questions out. I've talked a lot. Thanks for listening. So let's go ahead. Yes, Jules, that's what I would think. Jules is asking about Sasquatch and blurriness and so forth. Now, people see Sasquatch. I've talked to witnesses and so forth. Sometimes they just look like solid, like you've heard, flesh and blood, ordinary 3D. But I've talked to several witnesses. People have seen them go invisible. And these are different people that have never been to conferences before, very simple people. They're not interested in any fame or anything. And they've told me their stories. They see them disappear right in front of their eyes. So that's some sort of permittivity change or frequency change. And it's just in an ordinary resonance, kind of like we are. But then they shift to an oscillating permittivity. Maybe they're using sound. I would guess, Jules, my guess, they've got all that really fine hair. You know, we've recovered hair samples from Sasquatch. That would be very good for retaining electrostatic charge. As you walk across the forest floor, the charge would build up. It would build up, and it might be responsible for why Bigfoot often looks like they're gliding, sliding in over an area. People have seen Bigfoot glowing blue, okay, literally as if they're charged. They've seen this. It casts light in your car as they walk over to you. So it's just a really fascinating aspect of it. So yeah, I think it has something to do with resonance, and suggests that the resonance has a tunability to it that we are not normally familiar with. Yes, need to start meditating with a big bushel of Romanesco broccoli. Well, Brooke, that could help because that's a good fractal pattern, you know, the Romanesco broccoli and so forth. Right. It's like the orb video you sent me. I will look at that again. Yeah, the color change, speed of movement was very interesting looking, isn't it? And yes, thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Oh, we're going to read them. Jules says I should. Yes, Jules, you're correct. We should read them for future watchers because the chat's not always there. Yes, thank you. So let's go back a little bit. Oh, so the Sierra Sounds location. So that movie is coming out from the same Flash of Beauty Resonance Pro film crew in Portland. Sometime soon. They started a Kickstarter. I've seen some excerpts from it. It's quite good and has to do with the sounds. Now, here's the interesting thing, folks. Again, you could disagree with me saying, Simeon, this is not related with crop circle and so forth. I think that's how there's a Bigfoot crop circle connection, is you get some of these same effects. When I talked to Ron Moorhead several times, and I've interviewed him a couple times, I've talked to him a couple times, those sounds you couldn't see what was creating those sounds, even when it sounded like their camp was being taken apart and metal's hitting metal. There was nothing moved the next morning. But all these sounds were happening as if metal was colliding with metal, and pots were being thrown at stoves. And he said you could never see what was creating the sounds. You couldn't even see the Bigfoot that they recorded the conversations, which are the focus of this movie. You've heard the Sierra Sounds. If you haven't heard Sierra Sounds, I mean, just look it up. Maybe it's not your thing, but you can hear these hominoids communicating back and forth in this reverse samurai rapid language, which a lot of people have heard. And yet Ron said they should have cast shadows on the side of the hunting structure. You should have seen them when you peeked out your head from the structure that they built, which has now been disassembled. Some people argue it should have been preserved as a historic monument under the Historic Preservation Acts that we have in the U.S. In any case, it was taken down, but Ron said you couldn't see anything. He only, out of the 9 times he was up there, I think, how many hours on horseback did it take to get up there? 8 or so. Very remote location in the Sierra Nevadas. He only saw one at a distance once near the parking lot, way at the bottom. So there's this invisibility factor. There's this directional sound and so forth. So Brooks says, people who conduct magic rituals and believe in magic say there's a sudden cooling of the air when stuff is happening. Yeah, Brooke, this is what we see. You read these accounts, it's the same sort of feature, and it's around UFOs. I once spoke to someone I met. It was in a Sam Ash music store. That dates me a little bit. When I grew up back in New York, Sam Ash was the big music place. I don't even know if they exist anywhere. They certainly don't exist in the places I used to see them in the New York area. And I was speaking to someone there, and he just mentioned UFO sighting. I think I told him what I was interested in. It was in the guitar section, and he said he was in Miami. An object showed up over some apartments nearby. When he came out of the convenience store, it had gotten cold, and it was July. It should have been hot. You needed a jacket. So, yeah, you get this cooling, but Brooke, you also get this. You listen to reports of cops going into buildings searching a building and one of the rooms is really cold and there's no refrigerator, there's no air conditioning. It's in the summer. It's on the second floor. Should be hot. It's one of the rooms is different. I think this is the vortex cooling effect that Pollock is talking about. And if you don't agree, prove me wrong. What do you think it is? That cooling effect suggests there's a name for it in science. It's called negative temperatures. And negative temperatures are not just cold temperatures. They're substances that as they absorb energy, they cool down because they're putting the energy into structure, not thermal randomness, which is normally what we perceive as heat, whatever that is. That it's the opposite in these sorts of structures. That's why, Brooke, I think of them as like sort of inverse mirror structures to our own, is because normally when you put energy into anything like your laptop, it gets warmer and warmer because the molecules are moving around more and more, right? But in objects like this that seem to be in an inverted electromagnetic state, as you put more energy into them, they cool down, but they're using the energy for structure. In other words, they've come into our side of reality and they're using the energy to create their structure here, something like that. So that's what I would think. Yes, Jules has put up the Martin Fleisch Memorial Project YouTube channel, which I encourage you. I've learned a ton there, and I encourage you to watch. Looking Way says that they hike in an area in the Sierras with a high magnetic energy. Oh, well, maybe you can tell us about this sometime, Looking Way. And different types of Sasquatches with orbs and very volcanic. Yeah, so this is another feature of, we've talked about, the folks from ATIP have the 5 observables, and we have the 5 unobservables, whatever you want to call it. The 5 mirror observables. We have these symptoms of non-ordinary electromagnetic phenomena, which for me spans UFOs to ghosts and everything in between. And I'm not saying that these UFOs don't have a material reality and so forth, but I've seen them too, and you have. And sometimes there's a very strange aspects to these craft where they seem solid and immaterial at the same time. It just is sort of an exotic type of condensed matter that it has different behaviors than what we're used to in our physical state here. And so going along with the sudden silence, the cooling, the directional sounds, the blurriness, the space-time loss are weird, anomalous light phenomena, which David Freiberger calls, from Stanford Linear Accelerator Center, his work on vortons. He sees it this way too, in a sense. My interpretation of Freiberg, he says that we're used to electromagnetic phenomena. What we're dealing with here are magnetic electrophenomena, where magnetism is the variable and flows like electricity does, the way we're used to. And he says it creates a very tightly bound magnetic particle that he calls the vorton, and it creates what he calls MLOs, mobile luminous objects. So these MLOs, and this encompasses ball lightning to Earth lights, to orbs, all of them are part of this phenomena of mobile luminous objects based around this magnetoelectricism, something like that. Magnetoelectronic effect is a highly condensed magnetic effect that produces these coherent, long-lasting plasmoids, self-contained plasmas. So that's one way to look at it. So that's why the orbs go along with it, is birds of a feather flock together, and this is why you get Bigfoot with orbs. Stan Gordon, who we've talked many times to, I just talked with him a couple days ago, which is why I put up his information I learned from him about Kecksburg, so forth. He's responsible for all these books. You read Stan Gordon's books, you get these orbs around these cryptid type interactions, what people see, and UFOs. It all goes back to his book about the 1970s wave of UFO sightings, which also had Bigfoot sightings in his neck of the woods in Pennsylvania. And this is why researchers like Stan, and by the way, Stan is in Dave Paulides' new movie, which I haven't seen yet, but I hope to get to it this weekend, American Sasquatch, Man, Myth, or Monster. Stan is there talking about this. He has always seen UFOs connected to Sasquatch. Now, for pure MUFON researchers, they're going to say, leave your Sasquatch out of our UFOs. So they go together often. And in my view, they go together because they're using some of the same types of electromagnetic non-ordinary resonance, the Freiberger, Vorton type structures, fractal toroidal structures. And again, it's in our reality, but it's often decoupled. We often don't see it, and we have been socialized not to see it. It's the nature of our socialization process from the moment we are socialized from the time we're little kids, go through school, we're told these things aren't real, but it's not like they're inherently strange. We're just not all that familiar with them in our culture because we haven't talked about them very much. Okay, let's get back to some of your questions. Short Order Cook wants to know, is there some type of structure or molecular change at the bend of the wheat stalk that is consistent? Keep them flat. It seems to be, we have seen it, as I mentioned before, we have seen it in our own formations, these swollen nodes and things. Okay, we've seen it. And in the bends. So it could be a response to the crop circle being there. It could be the phototropic response, not necessarily an indication of a microwave radiation, which, I'm not inherently against. Maybe that happens some of the time. But it could be the plants readjusting themselves once the formation is there. So Looking Away says, at my job, I work with magnetic energy, and my job is to field and tune the magnets. Cool. And others still can't understand. No, because it works at other principles, and we've called it paranormal and supernatural and spooky. But as you know, people see it and experience it. Brooke says waterfalls rushing granite. Yes, exactly. There was an article which I'm looking to find again. It was in Science Magazine. It was about how, Brooke, it was just about running water creating charge separation, which is why in some areas around streams you see orbs consistently over those areas. The way the water is running over the rock and so forth is creating this charge. In my view, creating the charge separation, and then you get the charges recombining. You get some of these long-lasting plasmoids coming out of there. So Jules wants to know, does the chiral vortex of electrical windings hold to the same logic and physics as crop formation? I think this has a lot to do with it. I think that there's particular patterns and windings in these circles. Some of them are very precisely made. They're like a tunable circuit, and they're a macroscopic tunable circuit, not some microcircuit that you would find, in a piece of electronics. They're kind of like an Earth technology, right? Earth tech. So let's see. Let me go. Oh, excuse me. Let me go to the bottom here. Yes, sure, of course. Yes, we love Stan. Anything else before we? Jules, do we have time for a little music here? What do you think? We have talked a lot here, folks. I appreciate you watching this. And again, these are my views. This could be wrong. I just, after 30 years, about 3 decades of researching this phenomena, starting in 2026 will be 30 years. When I took my first RV class, I would say that's the date, and I think it was in May. It'll be 30 years of researching this. This is my best understanding of how these phenomena fit together. Now, if you don't agree, fine. It's fine. Maybe there's another reason why this happens. But after 3 decades and countless lectures and conferences and talking to people and reading and my own experiences, my own ball of lights. I've also saw another one with another fellow right at Golden Ball Hill there near Woodborough Hill. We saw one rise right out of the ground. It was grapefruit sized. It was like a blue glowing grapefruit, just there for a few seconds. But he saw it too. It was so quick. I almost would have thought I was making it up. We both saw it. So I've seen ball lightning a couple of times. By the way, the report by Eric Davis for the Air Force in 2003 said that I believe 20% of the American population has seen ball lightning too. So you might have seen it too and not even been aware of it. Exploring the woo with you. Yes, we're all exploring this together, folks. This is what they didn't tell us. And it seems like they're still not telling us, but we will figure it out for ourselves because, as others have pointed out, this has to do with how we live on the planet and energy generation and living in a way that doesn't create, excessive pollution and destruction and extinction of the other creatures that live here. This is what this is all about, is living in a way, living with abundance with the planet without destroying it and creating unlivable conditions and poisoning the air and the water and all. We don't need to do all that if we have these types of resonance-based understandings, resonance-based technologies. We can live in a harmonious way with our planet, with the universe, and not feel like we just have to be taking from it all the time and destroying it and creating all this destruction, right? That's how I look at these technologies. I don't think maybe Tesla didn't get it 100% right. Maybe these energies are not quite as transmissible in the way he thought as easily. But we'll figure it out one way or another. We're starting to figure it out. So, okay, folks. So, yes, I will be on Coast to Coast. If you're listening right now, on the 12th of December, on the 17th, later in the show, like the second half of the show. The show from the 16th over to the night of the 17th. Or we'll be talking about crop circles. We'll see, I believe it's with George, what sort of questions we get about this also from the audience. So, yes, nature of reality is a good way to put it. It's about the nature of reality and the reality of nature, and it's working with, all of this has to come down to working with natural principles anyway in the end. I once heard Ray Bradbury, the science fiction writer at the University of Arizona, when I went to the University of Arizona in the 80s, Ray Bradbury gave a lecture, and he said, all of technology is an extension of our bodies and of nature. Everything's an extension of our feet, our fingers, our sensory organs, right? TV, transportation, it's all extension of what we already are. So we might as well do it the way nature does it because it just makes more sense. It just makes more economic sense to do it that way. Right? So, let's see. Anything else? Okay, I think we're going to do a little guitar before we say goodnight. And thanks for watching again. Let's see, we're going to hook this up here. Can you all hear that? Let's see. One second. How's the sound? Yes, we're gonna turn the volume on. Okay, so this is one of my more recent songs, as you know, but I'm not doing this sort of research. By the way, there's 2 DVDs where you can find a little of my playing on. One is a Bob Dylan Rolling Thunder review about his 1970s tour with Joan Baez. Got a notification on that DVD, a little of his finger picking stuff somewhere. And then Joni 75, Joni Mitchell's 75th birthday tribute in Hollywood. I'm in there somewhere because They don't send you royalty checks for nothing. So, if you like any of this music, by the way, I want to tell you something, folks. This YouTube channel is technically an artist's channel. So I get to, this is actually a music channel. Believe it. But here we go. So this is Ride My Big Feet. This is a song I wrote, and this is what the song's about. Ride My Big Feet. I imagined what it would be like, since you read these stories of people being lifted up all around in their sleeping bags away from the campfire. And they describe this feeling of floating through the forest until the Bigfoot puts them down. It's clunk. And what it's like to jump over a ravine with the Bigfoot holding you. People have described this. And so I imagined what it'd be like if Bigfoot gave you a piggyback ride, okay, through the forest, that kind of gliding feeling. Anyway, this is a song. It's called Ride My Big Feet. All right. right. All right. Well, we're all warmed up here. How about one more before we say goodnight for the night? Yeah, you can find all of this music's on SoundCloud, all the streaming services. Yeah. Okay. This one, this is called, so I was watching hummingbirds one time, and I was thinking about some of these things that we talk about here. I was like, maybe they're not just staying aloft with their wings. More like what Pollock argues, that the wings creating electrostatic charge and they're levitating, right? It's sort of indirect thing. I was thinking about it. So I ended up thinking, how do they go all the way up from Southern California up to the coast? I mean, thousands of miles. They don't even stop. It's amazing. So I wrote this song. It's called Jimungerous. That's what this song is. I'm going to tilt it so you can see the... Yes. Well, folks, thanks for watching. We will see you sometime in the next broadcast. Keep resonating and keep your questions coming in. And we will see you around the multiverse, okay? Anything else? Okay, cool. Thanks. Glad you liked it. And we will see you in the next broadcast. And don't miss us on Coast to Coast this coming Wednesday. So thanks a lot, and we will see you soon. Bye for now.